A few big movies hit theaters this past weekend. One was a semi-success and the other was a complete failure. Well, which one was which? You'll find out right now on Does It Hold Up? Box Office Edition. I'm Adam. This show happens every single Tuesday where we talk about this past weekend's box office. What were the top 10 movies? What are the top 10 movies of 2024 so far? How has Inside Out 2 been doing against Deadpool and Wolverine? I love taking a look at that chart to see what's going to be the #1 movie of the year. We also do a comparison of 2024 to 2023. How well is this year holding up compared to the previous year? And at the end of the show, we do something that I love, which is the flashback to a movie from the past to see how well it did in theaters upon its release. Let's go ahead and get started with all that good stuff. The #1 movie at this past weekend's box office was The Wild Robot. The new DreamWorks animation film did come in #1 with $35.8 million. Although this was slightly above projections, it still seems like a rather disappointing opening. When you think about how this is the franchise that has Shrek and Puss in Boots, and they should have opened up better. This movie got a lot of attention during its trailers being released online, and I'm not sure why it didn't open up slightly higher. I expected a little bit more, but it is a family-friendly animated film. We know those play in theaters for a really long time. So it's possible that with this decent opening, it has a lot of room to grow. Maybe it's got some good legs and it's going to hang around for quite a while. $35.8 million makes it the 24th highest opening weekend, unadjusted for inflation, for a DreamWorks movie. In second place was Beetlejuice in its 4th week with another $16.2 million. It fell 37%, which is still a decent hold in week 4, and it's crossed $250 million at the domestic box office. Transformers 1 in its 2nd weekend falls 63%. It only made $9.1 million. Now, that could be because it was competing against the new movie, The Wild Robot, so, families had to decide which one are they gonna go see, and unfortunately, or fortunately, The Wild Robot seems to be the movie that they chose to go see. But that doesn't mean Transformers 1 is done yet. It is an animated film. Audience reviews are very positive for this movie. Critic reviews are somewhat mixed, but they definitely lean towards positivity. So there's a chance this movie can still make a lot of money going forward, which I really hope so, because if you watched the show last week, I love this movie. I thought it was absolutely amazing, and I hope more people go see it. It is, right now, the 2nd lowest grossing Transformers movie of all time. It's $30 million above Transformers the movie from 1986, but it was nowhere near any of the live-action Transformers, and in fact, if it stays at this pace, it will be the first Transformers movie since Transformers the movie back in 1986 to not cross the $100 million mark at the domestic box office. I hope it gets there, that's all I'm saying. In 4th place is a new movie to the list out of India. It is Devara Part 1. It made $5.6 million. These movies do really well. I'm gonna have to start looking into these a little bit harder because we see a lot of them here on the show. They pop in for a week or 2 weeks, sometimes a little longer, and then they're just gone again. But they're always there. They're always opening up pretty well. So there must be something to these movies. And this one stars the same man who was the lead in Triple R or RRR from a couple years ago, which was a massive hit. So I'm gonna have to start seeing these. In 5th place is Speak No Evil with a 27% drop. It's been holding steadily over these 3 weeks with another $4.2 million and $28 million overall. In 6th place is the new movie that I referenced at the top, which was an abysmal failure. And it is the Francis Ford Coppola produced, directed, and self-financed movie, Megalopolis. This is a complete disaster. Critics are trashing this movie. Audiences trashing this movie. It opened up to only $4 million on a $120 million budget. I can only think of a handful of movies that opened up worse with a budget over $100 million. I know, like, The Adventures of Pluto Nash had $100-something million budget, only opened up like $2 million. And really, that's the only other one I can think of right now. So you don't want to be in the same conversation as Pluto Nash when it comes to this. I don't know what happened here. Adam Driver spoke very highly about his time making this movie, and he's a star, I would say. I don't think he's one of the biggest stars, but people do enjoy him. The cast is massive. The movie looks somewhat pretty. Francis Ford Coppola is not a bad director by any means. So what happened? $4 million. Most critics are saying the movie's just a complete mess. It's nonsensical, it's incoherent, it's just nothing good about it, nothing redeeming. So I would imagine this will probably drop out next week, which will make it one of the biggest disappointing runs in box office history. In 7th place is Deadpool and Wolverine in its 10th week. 10 weeks in the top 10, only 2 more weeks and it'll tie Inside Out 2. With $2.7 million, a 27% drop, and it's crossed $631 million. In 8th place is Never Let Go in its 2nd week with a 50% drop. It brought in $2.2 million. This is a movie that I've heard mixed things about. It looks kind of interesting, but from the trailers, I'm pretty sure I already have the ending figured out. So I'm not really that interested to rush out to theaters to check it out. It also seems like a movie that's going to be better, probably better from the comfort of my own home. So as soon as it hits streaming, I will be watching this one, but I wonder if people feel the same as I do. They don't really feel like it's a necessity to go see this one in theaters. In 9th place is My Old Ass. Yes, I starred in a movie. No, I'm just kidding. The movie is called My Old Ass. It's in its 3rd week, and it had a massive jump up of 688% from last week for $2.1 million, just under $2.2 million, and that's because it released wide. It was only in about 50 theaters last week. This week it's in about 1,300 theaters. That's why you see that giant increase. I've heard good things about this one. It's a lot of fun with some really snappy, witty dialogue. So if you like things like The Social Network with that fast-paced quippiness, this might be a movie for you. And in 10th place is the re-release of Howl's Moving Castle. It brought in $2.1 million, and I'm shocked by this number. Howl's Moving Castle is a fantastic movie that has a long history with a lot of love, and yet somehow it's only made $7 million at the domestic box office between its original release, one re-release, and this current re-release. And as you can see, it's made 2.1 this time, so it was under $5 million at the domestic box office since it came out. We can do better than that. This movie's amazing. If it is playing in a theater near you, go check it out. I think you're really gonna like it. 5 movies came into the charts this week, so 5 movies dropped out of the top 10, and they were Jungkook, I Am Still. That was a limited engagement. It was only for one weekend, so that makes a lot of sense. It fell out after 1 week. The Substance also fell out after 1 week, even though a lot of people are talking about this as a very good horror-esque thriller movie, but not enough to stay in the top 10. Am I Racist falls out after 2 weeks. Great. Reagan falls out after 4 weeks, and Alien Romulus has a decent run in theaters, making over $100 million, but falls out after 6 weeks. Let's go ahead and compare 2024 to 2023 with our next chart, because we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we have been. This was the 39th week of 2024, and as we know from the previous charts, The Wild Robot led the way. It led the way to a pretty good $92.8 million across all released movies, which does beat last year, where the new movie hitting theaters was Paw Patrol, The Mighty Paws or something. I don't know. It was a Paw Patrol movie. I don't have kids. Didn't go see it. But that movie led the way to $85.5 million last year, so Although we did here in 2024 come out on top, it's a little closer than you'd expect, but it's interesting to note that the two big movies both of these years on this weekend were an animated family-friendly film. I'd have to go back in history and take a look. I wonder if this is kind of a regular thing around this weekend to put out those animated films. We have been doing pretty good though, beating 2023 consistently. In fact, I was looking at this chart, and if we go back to the beginning of the year, 2024 was getting crushed by a lot. 39 weeks in, it's currently 25 to 14. 2023 has won 25 weeks, 2024 has won 14 weeks. But if we only look at week 24 through now, it's a 12 to 3-ish split. 2024 is slowly gaining momentum here, and if they can finish out the year pretty strong, it'll be a good sign for theaters going forward. Okay, the next thing we take a look at is Deadpool and Wolverine versus Inside Out 2. We've been tracking it for the last couple of weeks to find out which one's going to be the #1 movie at the theater, and unless there's going to be a big change here in the next couple of weeks, pretty sure we have our answer. You can see here in week 9, Inside Out 2 has pulled even farther ahead of Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine will come very, very close, but each week it seems to be falling farther and farther behind, and in fact the only reason it had that big of a jump at the beginning was just the opening was massive. And yes, it has legs. It's still in the top 10 in its 10th week, but it's not making as much money per day or per weekend as Inside Out, so it's going to go away sooner rather than later. Inside Out 2 will be the #1 movie. Might be the last time we check in with this chart. Speaking of Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, I feel like I say that every single week coming out of that chart. I'm going to find something else new to say. But let's go ahead and take a look at the top 10 movies of 2024 so far. No changes to this chart, so we'll just run through it real quick. Inside Out 2 is still #1, followed by Deadpool 3, then Despicable Me 4. Dune Part 2 is still in 4th place. It's probably going to stay there. I don't think anybody's going to come up and beat it, except maybe one movie. Twisters is in 5th place with 267. It's going to stay right there. Beetlejuice 2 is the one that we have to watch movement on. It's currently at 250 million in 6th place. Does it have another 17 million in it to pass up Twisters? Maybe. Does it have another 32 million in it to pass up Dune Part 2? That's what I'm not sure about, and what will be very interesting to follow along with. Godzilla Kong, The New Empire's in 7th, Kung Fu Panda 4 in 8th, Bad Boys, Ride or Die in 9th, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes still rounds out this chart in 10th. Do you think any movies are going to pop into this chart by the end of the year? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm not sure. And we always finish up this show by doing a flashback to the past to talk about a movie that was in theaters previously and how well it did. So we got a request to do a certain movie this week. So Maddie, this one's for you. We're going to talk about True Lies, James Cameron's movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was a big hit when it came out, but was it successful during its theatrical run? Let's go ahead and take a look. True Lies had a budget of $110 million. It spent another $65 million on marketing, and this is what it looked like in theaters. Domestic week 1, it made $40 million. Studios kept $24 million of that. Domestic week 2, it made another $30.5 million, where the studio got $16 million. Domestic week 3, plus the rest of its run, it made about $75 million. Studios got $37.4 million from that. Internationally, it did pretty well, at $218 million. But studios only get 40% of international gross, so they only got to pocket $87 million from that. It was released in China, so $14.7 million over there, but studios only got to keep $3.3 million of that. So remember, it's got a $175 million budget, and none of those weeks here domestically really seem to add up to that. The movie grossed a total of $378.8 million, but after all the theaters took out their cut of ticket sales, the movie only netted $169.2 million. If you subtract the $175 million budget with marketing included, you get an estimated loss for True Lies of $5.7 million. This movie's fantastic. There's no reason it should have ever lost any money at the theaters. And you can argue with me and say maybe the marketing budget's a little bit too high. Even if we drop it down to $60 million, it still lost $700,000. If you knock it down to $55 million, it made a gross at that point. It made a profit, but a very, very small one. And this is what happens. Your movie did phenomenally well, a $400 million worldwide gross. But because you spent so much to make it, you did not become successful in theaters. You did not come out on top. It's just a lesson. You want to make more money in theaters? Make a movie for a smaller budget and hope that it does this well. Okay, that's it for the show this week. Let me know in the comments any thoughts that you have. I'll be back later on Friday with the redoing the Oscars. This year we're talking about 2002. We're going to go back and see what awards I would change if I could go back in time and make those changes. I'm also going to be back next Tuesday with another box office roundup, and every single day here on the channel, we release fun facts about movies. So subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff so you never miss a thing. And until next time, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and keep watching movies.